On June 6th, 1963, before some of us were born, the Chicago Cubs were playing the San Francisco Giants at Wrigley Field. If you've never had a chance to go to Wrigley Field, you really need to go to Wrigley Field and watch a ball game. It is an amazing place to watch a ball game. The Cubs had swept a doubleheader the day before, and this game had two star pitchers pitching in it, so it was a low-scoring game. The Giants score one run in the first inning. Later on, in like the fourth or fifth inning, they add a run, so now they're up 2-0. In the eighth inning, Billy Williams comes up for the Cubs and hits a two-run home run, so now the game is tied. No one scores in the ninth inning, so we are going to extra innings. In the top of the 10th inning, the Giants get two singles and an intentional walk, so the bases are loaded and there's one out. The Cubs manager decides it's time for a pitching change. And so he calls for Gandy McDaniel to come into the ball game with the bases loaded, one out, game's tied, top of the 10th inning. For those of you who don't know, Gandy McDaniel is our brother in Christ. The ball field at Florida College is named after him. He gave some presentations in some homeschool groups that Shelley was teaching when we lived in Dallas. She was teaching a history of baseball class, and she had him come in to talk to the kids in that class, and he wore his Cubs jersey. And she said even in his 80s, he looked athletic as he comes in and talks to the kids. And this is his most memorable time as a professional baseball player. So here he is on the mound, bases loaded, top of the 10th inning. He throws one pitch to the home plate. It's a strike. He gets on the mound again. He ends up stepping off the rubber, whirls around, and picks Willie Mays off second base. So now, first and third, two outs. It's going to take a hit to give them the lead. A sacrifice fly won't work anymore. So already, he has had success. According to our modern day analytics, when he entered the game, they had a 22% chance of winning, the Cubs did. He ends up striking that guy out. Could you imagine the field, the stands, erupting when he strikes that guy out? Because now the Cubs are going into the dugout with a chance of winning the ball game. Still tied 2-2. Now, in our way of doing this, if you're a baseball fan now, what's going to happen next would be something you're like, what? That can't happen. Because a relief pitcher that comes in and does that, what does he do now? He's done, right? He's done. He has done his job. He has got him out of the jam. He goes back and takes a shower and he gets high fives. You've done your job. But it just so happens he is going to lead off the inning. And the manager doesn't pinch hit for him. So he comes up to bat in the bottom of the 10th inning, tie ball game at Wrigley Field after just doing what he did. 2-2 count, 2 balls, 2 strikes. That pitch comes in, he swings, and he misses. I'm just joking. He hits a home run. He hits a home run over the the left field fence, and he runs around the bases. All the crowd is going berserk. He touches home plate. Everybody picks him up. I mean, and that's like the greatest thing for an athlete, right? To be carried off the field. He is carried off the field. The crowd is going crazy. And the point is, it would have been easy for the Cubs to give in or to not give it your best effort. But on that particular day, Gandy McDaniel finished that game as strong as a relief pitcher can finish a game. I don't know about you. Finishing is a lot harder than starting. Finishing strong is a lot harder than starting strong. And this lesson, there's always a bit of each lesson that's for me, But I'm telling you, this lesson is primarily for me, and I hope you can get something out of it, because I need to learn to finish stronger. I need to learn to finish what I start, and not just start a whole bunch of different stuff and not finishing the things that I have started. So I hope this lesson will be good for you as well. I'll give you some examples. It's easy for me to get on the riding mower and mow the grass. It's so much harder to do the weed eating and trimming all the hedges and pulling all the weeds and blowing the grass off of everything to make sure that when you, now that looks good. And that's so much harder for me. It's easy for me to get the roller out and paint the majority of the wall. It's so much harder to finish by going about and doing all the edging and getting it all to look perfectly. I was talking to Shelly about this. I said, what is it that you have a hard time finishing that you start? Laundry. It's easy to start the loads. It's easy to throw them in the dryer. But the folding of them, the ironing of them, the putting them in their drawers the way they go, and hanging them up exactly like they're supposed to go in the closet with all the colored shirts going right in the same direction. You know, Shelley likes to put the hanger in the same way all the time. She says, that's hard for me. And you guys, does anybody here always finish everything they start and never have any problems? Because we're going to take notes from you, okay, as we go. There's just so much times, it's so much easier to start than it is to finish. There were some friends of ours, and this isn't going to happen. I can guarantee you this is not going to happen 2 weeks when we move. They would not go to bed until every box was unpacked and every picture was hung. They wanted to finish, all right? We're going to start the thing. We're going to finish it. When we start it, we're going to finish it. And so if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, when that last picture is hung, we're not going to stop until it's finished. I'm not that guy, okay? I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to be tired. There's going to be boxes probably for weeks. Who knows how long those boxes are. So what I want to do today is I want to look at 3 different points, and they're real similar. There's a little nuance to them. The first point is just that it's important for us to finish strong. And the second point we're going to look at is it's important for us to finish life strong. And the third point we're going to look at, it's important for us to finish the tasks of life strong. This hit me pretty hard when my dad passed away. Because my dad passed away, and I was thinking, I'm in the last third of my life. Chances are, I'm in the last third of my life. And so I have to figure out how I'm going to finish that last third. Am I going to finish that last third on a sprint, trying to get as much done as I can? Or am I going to just, I'm done. I'm just going to coast the rest of the way. And that's the decision that all of us have to make. Am I coasting to the finish line? Or am I going to sprint to the finish line and finish the race that God has put before me the best way that I can? So let's go ahead and look at Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. Because finishing strong actually starts by starting strong. And making the plan to finish strong when you start to begin with. We're going to start reading in verse 27 of Luke chapter 14. It says, and whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great far way off, he sends a delegation and asks the conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. We must start planning from the beginning of a task or the beginning of our life, or when we first become a Christian, how we are going to finish that task in a strong fashion. So if you go out, the I for eyesore, right? Do I need to say any more about that? There's this building there that has been there and not finished, and people say, why'd you start a building and you're not able to finish that building? We don't want to be the kind of people that people look at and say, you know what, Dwayne is always starting things, but he never seems to finish them. That's not a good representation for God when we do that. We have to be able to finish the task that we are starting. In John chapter 6 and verse 60, this is a time where Jesus is preaching some pretty hard things about him being the bread of life. And people are looking at this and say, I don't understand that. How easy is it for us, if you don't understand something, to give up? Pretty easy, right? You know, you don't understand algebra. Yeah, I'm not doing algebra. I'm going to just quit this. Or you don't understand something. You know, it takes too much work to figure that out. I'm just going to turn around and not follow anymore. And this is what was happening here. So in verse 60 of John 6, therefore many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, this is a hard saying. Who can understand it? When Jesus knew in himself that his disciples complained about this, he said to them, does this offend you? What then if you should see the Son of Man ascend where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were who would not believe and who would betray him. Let's just stop here for a second. First of all, we should be very thankful that Jesus finished what he started. And he finished it strong too, not only with dying on the cross like he did, but resurrecting. He finished that very strong. But what did Jesus knew before he started? He knew that some people wouldn't believe. And he knew that some would betray him. Did he say, this is going to be hard, I'm not going to do it? No, he went ahead and did it. And that's a very important point. There's nothing that we are going to accomplish in life or try to accomplish in life that's going to be smooth sailing all the way through. There is going to be opposition to everything that we try. Verse 65, and he said, therefore, I say to you that no one can come to me unless he has been granted to him by the Father. From that time on, many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. Then Jesus said to the 12, do you also want to go away? But Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Also, we have come to believe and know that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. We must determine not to quit on our trials when things get tough. When things get hard. When people are against us. We don't just put our tools down and walk away. We don't just put our Bibles down and walk away from God. We must continue because we have to understand this true principle about life. Things will always get tough. If you're lucky, and we have some people here, you have Terry here and Bobby here, they own their own companies, they do all these projects. You might have a job that goes according to plan with no obstacles every once in a while, right? Every once in a while. But most of the time, you're going to come across a snag. Whether it's an employee that doesn't show up for work or you get into this project and something happens that you weren't expecting, there's always going to be snags. There's always going to be difficulties. There's always going to be challenges in life. And we can't just throw in the towel when that happens. We have to keep going on. So it's important that we finish our projects. It's important that we finish strong. So let's look at why it's important for us to finish life strong. Now I want to say this. And Shelley says, Dwayne, you cannot use any names. All right? We have some older members that are not in the last third of their life. They may be in the last 10% of their life. We don't know. But they're finishing life strong. And aren't they a huge encouragement to everyone else? Every time they bring their walker into this building, they encourage us. Every time they take the chance to write a card to someone, they encourage us. It's so important that in our life, we finish life strong. Revelation 2 and verse 8 says this, and to the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these things says the first and the last, who was dead and came to life. I know your works, your tribulation, and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but they are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. I mean, what if you get this letter? Don't fear the things you're about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested. And you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death. The crown of life only goes to those who are faithful until death. The crown of life only goes to those who finish the race, and finish the race in a strong fashion. That's why it's so important to finish this race and finish it with strength. Finish it by sprinting across that finish line, not resting across that finish line. Abraham's a great example of this. If anyone could have said, you know what, I've done enough. I'm just going to rest for the rest of my life, enjoy. Abraham could have done that, right? Or Moses could have done it. We would not have judged them, either one, as being anything less than still a good person of faith and courage if they had done that, but they didn't. In Genesis chapter 24 and verse 1, it says this: Now Abraham was old, well advanced in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. So Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had, please put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but you shall go to my country and to my family and take a wife for my son Isaac. Incredible story. He does that successfully, but that's not the point. The main point that I want to bring out was Abraham was old when he sent his servant to find Isaac a wife. I'm hit by this, and my mom used to say it, and I didn't know if I believed it, but I think I believe it now. You're never done parenting your children. And that's an important thing to remember. Sometimes it's easy to get them to a point. I was talking to a friend this week, and he told me this story that one of his friends told him this story. There was like 6 in that family. And this is how the 18th birthday went. Happy birthday. Here's your cake. Here's your present. Get in the car. He took him to the train station, the bus station. And he says, I'll buy you a bus ticket wherever you want to go. Whatever city you want. And on their 18th birthday, they all had to leave home. He said some of them went to Houston, went to the YMCA, they didn't have a place to go. That's not really a good way to finish parenting, okay? That's not finishing parenting strong. That's not saying, all right, 18, you're off the books. We need to understand that sometimes, as it was here, parenting wasn't done. Isaac was 40 years old. And Abraham was still looking out for him. And in Genesis chapter 25, Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, but Abraham gave gifts to his sons of the concubines which Abraham had. And while he was still living, he sent them eastward away from Isaac his son to the country of the east. So what is he doing now? Even when he's older than old, right? Here he said in chapter 24, he was old, and he said he was well advanced in years. And even after that, before he died, he knew he had something else he had to do. He had to get all the other sons away from Isaac. Because God didn't promise the land to all these other sons. God promised the land to Isaac. He had to make sure that Isaac was set up for success. Now to all of you, I don't do this very often, but to all of you parents of young kids, start when they are young. Be consistent and give it a strong effort all the way around. Along the way, and remember that your parenting of your kids might last until they're 40. It'll change, but it's going to last for a while. And that's something that we have to finish strong. We can't just say, 18, get on the train, get on the bus, go somewhere else. We have to be there for them. Well, in Joshua, there's this story. We're going to read a little bit of this. Caleb. He was old. 85 years old. No offense if you're 85 years old. But he was old. All right? When he was 40, he was one of the spies that went and spied out the land. He came back with a good report. Nobody listened to him. He and Joshua did. Everybody else said, no, we can't go and take out that land. And so God said, all those that are 20 and over are going to die in the wilderness. The only two that are going to be able to go into the promised land are Joshua and Caleb. So when he is now 85 years old, it's time for them to go take the land. They've had 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. They've already started taking the land. And it's time for him to get his possession. Now, I don't know about you, but I might want to sit in the tent and send Drew and Peyton. You go talk to Joshua. You go remind Joshua. You're young. You get your land that he's promised us. But that's not what Caleb does. Listen to what Caleb does. At 85 years old, he goes to Joshua and says, I'm in the middle of verse 6. You know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me at Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God. So Moses swore to me on that day, saying, surely the land which your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance, and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said these 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now here I am this day, 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now is my strength for war, both for going out and coming in. Now therefore, give me this mountain of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. The giants are there. The cities are big cities. The cities have big walls. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. This is a man that wasn't going to cower in the face of obstacles. He was going to say, give me the giants, give me the big cities, give me the fortified cities. I'm ready to go. But we learn from him that strong finishes are often the result on wholly following the Lord throughout life. And this is a challenge, right? Because what do some of us want to do? We want to wait to the end and give it our strong finish at the end. You know, we procrastinate, we don't do what we're supposed to do all along. We're not pulling weeds every week, you know, and all of a sudden you have this huge task in front of you. If we want to finish the Lord strong, you better start being strong when you're 20 and you're 30 and you're 40 and you're 50. Because if you're not strong then, it's going to be so much harder to be strong at the end. You can't cram for it. You can't make up for it. Now, I know that there's stories in the Bible of people who come to the Lord late, and that's great. We want everybody to come to the Lord at some point. But the ideal situation is you start out when you're young, and you serve the Lord with all of your heart, all of your might, all of your strength, until the very end. And if you do that, you still will not even come close to earning or deserving the reward God's going to give you. It is the least you can do to give your entire effort to the Lord who has done so much for us. So those of us who are in this room, we're not going to wait till we're older to start giving it our all. We're going to decide to give it our all now, and to make the commitment right now that we're going to see the finish line all the way through. We're running through it, right? We're running through the finish line. We're not coasting to that finish line. But that commitment starts with us now. And Caleb could do that because he believed in and meditated on God's promises. How many times do you think Caleb thought in this 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, one day I'm going to get the giants, I'm going to get the best land, God promised me. God promised me. If we're going to finish strong, we got to believe in the promises of God. In Judges chapter 1, 12 through 15, we're not going to read it, but this is what it is. Basically, he's getting ready to take a city, and he says, I need help. Who will take that city for me? I'll give my daughter to marry. And the point that I want to make from that is finishing strong, sometimes you need help. You need help to finish strong. Does that make sense? And do some of us also have a problem with that? And if you like to do it all yourself, you like to do it all yourself? Maybe it's because you think you're the only one who can do it right and nobody else can do it right and it's just easy to do it yourself. We all have to come to a point to acknowledge our own limitations. And sometimes you need to ask for help. Sometimes that help might come just by one person, like it did in this case. Sometimes that help might be the whole group. Look, I just need everybody's help. I can't do this on my own. I can't finish this task I've started. Please help me. Or I'm having a hard time finishing life strong. Would you please help me do that? To finish strong, we must focus. I think this is also important too. We must focus on what we can still do, not on what we used to be able to do. If I'm running a real race, and when I was 20, I was going to cross that finish line with a lot more strength than I can today. And probably today, a little more strength than I'll be able to in 20 years or 30 years. Sometimes as we're getting older, we might think that, you know what, I can't do what I used to do. Therefore, I'm not useful. That's not true. God only expects us to do what we still can do. But we need to do what we still can do with all of our strength and finish strong in using that strength for Him. We have so many good examples of Christians here at PSD who are finishing strong. And to those of you, I'm not going to call any names, I'm not going to give any ages, but we appreciate you so much. And we need your example of finishing strong. Because we're going to all be in that situation at some point, and we're going to be able to look to you and say, I remember sister so-and-so, I remember brother so-and-so who came all the time, still did this, still did that, still did this. I'm going to be like that person. And that's an important thing for us to do. All right, so we're going to move away and look at why it's important for us to finish our tasks strong, no matter what age we're in. Numbers chapter 23. Verses 50 through 54, God tells Moses to tell the people, go into the land and conquer the land, killing everybody. If you leave anybody, they're going to be a thorn in your side. You're going to end up worshiping their gods, their idols. They've had their chance. Remember, God postponed this because the wickedness of the people that lived there wasn't complete yet. Now He says they're completely wicked. They need to be destroyed for their wicked life. It's not you are doing something bad to them. I am executing judgment on them. They need to be taken off the face of this earth at this particular point. That's God's judgment. And God's judgment is always right. So if you jump down to verse in Judges, what I have there, and I have some stuff underlined and highlighted, I want you to notice what happens when they get ready to go in the promised land. God had the plan too that it wasn't going to be all at once. It was going to be slowly, because if you go too fast, the lions and the wild beasts are going to come behind you, eat all the dead people, and they're going to take over the cities. And you're going to have to come back and do it all over again and get rid of all the wild animals. And so this wasn't something like it was a speedy thing that they were supposed to do. They had time to do it. But look at Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants. They're in verse 27. If you go down to verse 28, they put them under tribute instead. So in other words, they decided not to finish the task that they started. We're not going to drive them all out. We're just going to make them pay us taxes. That sounds like a better plan anyway. God's plan isn't the right plan. And if you go down to verse 20, keep reading in verse 28, they did not completely drive them out. Verse 29, Ephraim did not drive them out. Verse 30, Zebulun did not drive the people out, but they put them under tribute. Verse 31, Asher did not drive all the inhabitants out. And Naphtali in verse 33 did not drive the inhabitants out. At the end of verse 33, they put them under tribute. At the end of the reading there, the very last, at the end of verse 35, they put them under tribute. God's people did not finish strong They failed to drive out the people as God had ordered them to. Now just think about this for a second. When they're going into the promised land, they start out pretty strong with Jericho. Right? That's a pretty strong start. Now they had to take a step back at Ai, but eventually they get everything accomplished with Achan's sin, and they go again, they take Ai, and there's pretty incredible victory. Remember, even the 5 kings that come up against them, they drive all of them out. They destroy all of them. They ended up having a session where they gall all the soldiers together, they throw all the kings onto the ground, and they step on them. It started strong. But at the end, they're like, too much work. Let's just leave them in the land, and let's just make them pay us taxes. The consequences of that were devastating. Not finishing strong totally destroyed the children of Israel. And there are some tasks that probably, maybe not all of us, but probably there's some tasks that all of us need to finish. Spiritual tasks, physical tasks, whatever they may be. Things that we've set out to do that we haven't finished. And that's what this lesson is about. This lesson is about, all right, what are those things that we haven't finished? What do we need to do to finish those tasks? How can we finish those tasks strong? 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 1. It says, I charge you therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and teaching. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. But you be watchful in all things, endure affliction, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. Finish strong is what he's telling them. And then he tells them, I am finishing strong. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all who love his appearing. Now, one thing that we remember from this passage that we've talked about before, Paul doesn't sugarcoat it. What does he say? It's going to be hard. They're not going to listen to you. They don't want to hear what you have to say, but you still do what God tells you to do because that's what God has asked you to do. We all must be aware of our or your personal barriers to finishing strong. They're going to be different for all of us. But whatever those barriers are, you have to be aware of them. And you have to know this. Satan is trying his best to stop you from finishing strong. You know, Satan doesn't care if he gets you when you're 18 or when you're 88. It's a victory for him. And he's going to try to pick us off at every area of our life. And so we need to have the determination that we are going to finish life strong and we are going to finish our task strong. How did Caleb do it? I don't have this in your notes, but this is the practical application part of it. All of us need to remember God's promises. That's how we're going to be able to finish strong. Take a promise of God that really means something to you, write it down, put it on your window, put it on your steering wheel. This is a promise God has made to me. He is going to be faithful to this promise. This is why I'm going to finish strong, because I'm going to get that crown of life. I am going to be with God forever. Make a list of areas in your life where finishing strong is most important. Because I'm going to share you a weakness of mine. One thing that stops me from finishing strong sometimes is I have a hard time saying no to the things that aren't that important. Does that make sense? And then what happens is I'm trying to do too much. And when I'm trying to do too much, I get overwhelmed and I don't finish the things that are the most important of all. So when we're prioritizing our life, we have to start with God and our family first, and our spiritual family, and everything else has to fit around that. You probably heard the example of the 5-gallon bucket, and they fill it with big rocks, and they say, is it full? And say, oh yeah, it's full, nothing else going there. But then they put small pebbles in there. Well, they got a lot more small pebbles in there. And then after the small pebbles, they put sand in there. Well, they're able to get a lot more sand in there. And then after the sand, they put water in there. They were able to get a little more water in there. If you were to dump that bucket out and start with the water, then go with the sand, then go with the small rocks, then go with the big rocks, you're not going to fit it all back in. So we have to make sure we start with the big things, the most important things. What are the things that you, right now, whatever age you are, I'm 54, whatever age, what things do I want to finish strong? Write those down. And then if something comes that's going to stop me from finishing that strong, I got to say no to that. I got to learn to say no to that. That's not something that I can do. Write down your plan to start strong, and then what you can to help other people finish strong. Back to Lindy McDaniel. Lindy McDaniel not only finished that game strong. When we saw him, he was a preacher. When he was playing baseball, he had a clause in his contract where he could always go to church on Sunday morning. That's pretty easy for baseball, not so easy if you're a professional football player, but if you're a relief pitcher in baseball, you could probably get away with that. So he had a little thing that he sent out to other pitchers, pitching for the master. He continued that, I think, until he died. And he was a preacher at a small church in Texas until COVID. And he got COVID, and he passed away during that time period. But he finished his life working for the Lord, doing what was more important than baseball. And can you imagine being carried off a field like that? How just insanely awesome that would be. What's it going to be like when we hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of my Father"? That will be a bazillion times better than being carried off a baseball field every day for the rest of your life. That's what awaits all of us if we finish strong. If you haven't started yet, we urge you to start. You want all your sins washed away. You want to be in covenant relationship with God through Jesus Christ. You can do that today. You can have all your sins washed away. You can be baptized in the baptistry behind me, and you can start this covenant relationship with God. Start it with the determination to finish it strong, and look around. These are the people that are going to help you finish it strong. We're going to help each other finish this race strong, aren't we? This is what we're here for, to encourage one another. If you're a Christian and let's say you've left, you've been tired, you've been frustrated, Satan has knocked you down and you haven't gotten back up, well, today's a good day to get back up. If you want to make anything right, recommit yourself to Jesus Christ. We can help you with that too. If we can help you finish strong in any way so that you can be victorious and be ushered in to be with God forever, we ask you to come as we stand and sing.